Welcome to the Ringer NFL show. Sheil Kapadia here with Steven Ruiz and Diante Lee. The playoffs are here and we are switching up the format. Fun format today. We're doing a little draft. Anytime you can incorporate a draft into a podcast, it's basically a rule. We all sign a contract. You got to do it because it's fun to do. It's fun to listen to as well. And so we are going to draft the teams based on who we're most confident in versus who we're least confident in. So there's 3 of us. We will do 4 rounds. So we will have 12 of the 14 teams picked. I'll explain the exact rules here in a moment. But Ruiz, I mean, who doesn't love a little putting together a little board regardless of the topic, right?
I spent an embarrassing amount of time figuring out which pick I wanted since I get to pick the order. Since I won the regular season picks contest, I have boards based on me having the first pick, Diante having the first pick, Sheil having the first pick. I'm trying to figure out how to get the right combination of teams I want. So I put a lot of thought into this.
Diante, I didn't put nearly as much thought into it. I don't know where you are on the range. Don't get me wrong. I prepared for the pod. I got my teams, but I was more instinct. There were a couple where I flip-flopped, but not too long.
Yeah, I tried to spend more time just looking at my board and making sure I had it lined up properly. And then I feel like because I knew Steven was going to be, or is likely to choose the first pick, that I was kind of trying to judge what would be available based off of that. So I spent a little bit more time on that. I just feel like if you're a Ringer NFL listener, you should be extremely excited about us working a draft, because if I remember properly, when we were previewing the conferences, we had to stop for about 10 to 12 minutes to try to sort out who had picked what teams to make the playoffs and win the division. So I can't wait to see how we trip over our own feet with this one.
I'm not buying it from either of you two. You guys are playing coy. I don't believe it. You guys studied the board.
All right. So here's what we're doing here. Okay, we're going to do the draft. As we do the draft, we're going to talk about the wild card games this weekend. We're going to talk about all the teams, what we think about them, whether it's this weekend or in the wider scope of the playoffs. And then we're still doing our picks. We're still doing our picks contest from the regular season, where we each have 3 picks, minus 120 or better each week. We're going to see where we end up at the end of the regular season. Right now, Ruiz is in the lead, 33-21. I'm second at 28-26. Diante third at 27-27. So listen, we still have 3 rounds left. Everybody's in it. No one's mathematically eliminated. All you got to do is go on a little heater, and this thing can flip by the time we're done at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. All right, so let's get to the draft here. Here's the format. So you get 1 point if your team gets to the divisional round. So if you get the Chiefs or the Lions, you get the 1 point already because they're already in the divisional round. You get 2 points if your team reaches the championship round. You get 3 points if your team gets to the Super Bowl, and you get 5 points if your team wins the Super Bowl. Thank you to Dan Comer, our friend, for coming up with the scoring system there. So we decided that since Ruiz is in the lead with the picks contest, there should be some kind of bonus. This is like our version of a first round bye. He gets to choose which pick he wants. So it's not that he gets the first pick because he might not want the first pick. We're doing snake order. And so Ruiz, you get to choose which spot you're drafting in. What do you got?
I don't want the first pick.
Okay.
I've thought about this. It was between the second and third pick, and I ultimately went with the third pick. And I'm hoping to get 2 teams in particular. If I get those 2 teams, I'll be happy. If I don't, then this will be a horrible miscalculation.
All right. So Ruiz gets the third pick. So he will snake in the first round. I get to choose second. And I'm going to go with the second pick. I like being in that in-between spot. I don't have to pick 2 teams at a time, which means Diante, you get to kick off the draft with the first pick in I still call it the 2024 season, the 2024, or maybe we'll do the 2025 NFL playoffs draft. Who are you selecting?
I just want to say this was literally the one spot I did not want to land.
It was the worst spot. When I went through all the possibilities, this was the one that I didn't want either. All the combinations I came up with the possible board were not good for me. So that's why I passed it on.
I will say, though, with the first pick, I'm going to take the same team I took when we were previewing conferences before the season started. It's Baltimore. I'm going to take them number 1. Wow. I think that there are a lot of arguments to make for like the Lions and the Chiefs. I spent a lot of time staring at both of those teams if I were to land first. But I think ultimately everything that I've wanted to see from the Ravens, I've seen over the last 6 weeks. Obviously it was a little bit rocky over the first 2 or so months of the year, but you look, they've been first in defensive passing EPA basically since they made the change to put Kyle Hamilton back at deep safety. I think Marlon Humphrey's been playing like an all-pro, and I think that the run defense has basically been steady throughout the year. And then what we've seen is that some of the ways that they kind of tripped themselves up on offense at times last season, trying to figure out what their identity was. I think that having Derrick Henry has actually done a lot more for just figuring out who needs to be in what role. Outside of just his own rushing production, I feel like Todd Monken has a better understanding of when to get into heavier personnel, when to set up the play action game, knowing when to take a load off of Lamar Jackson. And I think that that's going to be a big piece of Baltimore's postseason run, is that they finally have another gear they can tap into offensively. If they do get a 1 or 2 score lead, they can sit on the ball now in a way that I don't think they could have without asking Lamar to use his legs a bunch. And I think that that's going to be a big difference making factor for them. So I'm taking them with the first pick.
I feel like the big criticism of Todd Monken after the playoff loss to the Chiefs last year was that he forgot about the run game. He abandoned the run game early on. And I feel like the Ravens have one of the best run games every year. Before Derrick Henry got here, they had one of the best run games every year. But I feel like having Derrick Henry on the sideline or just there for Monken is going to be a reminder that, hey, we can't abandon the run game. And I don't think you will when one of your star players is at the running back position. I think it's just a reminder that you need to keep pounding the rock and that eventually things are going to break through, especially with Derrick Henry. You see the stats, like he dominates in the second half of games. He dominates at the end of seasons. And I think it's really going to help them out that he was able to, at least compared to his typical workload, it was a lighter workload. And I think this is the strongest we're ever going to see Derrick Henry in the playoffs. He hasn't really, outside of that Baltimore game in 2019, he hasn't really had that dominant postseason performance yet, or postseason run, I should say. And maybe this is the year we get it.
They average 6 yards a carry on first down runs. That's going to be, if they're able to maintain anything close to that, that's going to be a huge factor for this offense going through the postseason.
We always like to get into the details and the nuances of this game, but in the zoom out, narrative aspect of the NFL playoffs, no one has more at stake than Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, like if they have a early playoff exit, and I know not every year's been the same, and I know not I'm not saying every playoff loss has been his, but he's been, he could potentially win his 3rd MVP. To have 3 MVPs and to have not gotten to a Super Bowl, we know what the conversations are going to be. Why hasn't it happened yet in the playoffs here? So I feel like he's got a lot at stake, but he also has the path where the way he's playing this year, the pieces they have, and I'm with you guys. When I was doing my deep playoff dive this week, I'm like, man, the analytical part of my brain is like, the Ravens look like the best team and the most complete team. They've got the best offense. You laid it out, Diante. Second half of the season, they've really had the best defense, or one of the best defenses in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is healthy. I think John Harbaugh is a good coach. I think Todd Monken is a good offensive coordinator. So they kind of checked every box I was looking for as I was going through these teams. He will have to go to Buffalo most likely, and then go to Arrowhead most likely, and then beat whoever comes out of the NFC to get his first Lombardi trophy. Now, if he just gets to the Super Bowl, that's obviously a big step as well. But we could be at the end of this going, man, those conversations about Lamar in the playoffs were so stupid. Look at what he just did. He erased them all. Those are dead forever. And now we can just talk about this guy as, we probably already can talk about him that way, given what he's done. But it kind of reaches that next level on sort of the national narrative legacy thing.
Absolutely. And I think that had that conference championship game not gone the way it went, we might not be having these conversations. I think that ultimately you're going to be judged based on how you look against number 15 if you do have to match up against Kansas City. And that was definitely a big kind of chasm between the two, is that we saw Patrick Mahomes be lights out in that first half of the AFC championship game last year. And Lamar had the strip sack. He struggled to push the ball downfield. They weren't able to separate against Kansas City's DBs. And we saw Lamar kind of press. I think that this year, while it's hard to guarantee anything, the way he's been working as a drop back passer this season, I think he's been more willing to work the ball in the tight windows, And they haven't had to see as many tight windows because when they run play action with Derrick Henry on the field, I mean, there's just really not much defenses can do to try to take away those intermediate throwing windows. And I think as long as those guys are healthy, we obviously have to see what the status is of Zay Flowers, assuming that they win this weekend and move on. And if he's able to stay active or get back active and be on the field, you said it, Sheil. I mean, the complement of pieces that he has around him offensively, as well as a defense that looks like it can be trusted in a playoff environment again, and special teams that has been cleaned up over the last month or so of the season. Like you said, I mean, and this is the same conversation we were having last year about the Ravens. They have all the pieces to get it done. I think that, like you said, there's a lot at stake for Lamar, but I would also reframe that and say I think that he has the most to gain from having another deep playoff run, because the narrative on him is that he has not won many big games. And I've made this comparison before, but it reminds me so much of Peyton Manning before he broke through. And that was always a conversation, is when is he going to beat the truly elite teams in a playoff environment? And then you get that Super Bowl run, and there was nothing to talk about again after that, right? So I think that this is a great opportunity to do so. Obviously, going on the road for both the divisional and the conference championship game, if it plays out that way, will be difficult. But I have a lot of trust in what the Ravens have put on tape over the last 2 months.
Zay Flowers out for this game. Now they're still 9.5-point favorites against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see when the Steelers get picked, if the Steelers get picked in this game. But you know that if you're a Ravens fan, I feel like that makes you at least a little bit nervous with the passing game. That no Zay Flowers in this game and the Tomlin magic. But man, that would be the biggest upset of the playoffs this year if the Steelers somehow went into Baltimore and won that football game. To your guys' point, they have so many different ways to win games that I feel like that could be an excuse in the divisional round. That can't be an excuse in this round, right, Ruiz?
Right.
Yeah. And I'm thinking along those lines. Like, I have a pick from this game. I'm going to go Derrick Henry under 99.5 rush yards. If you remember, I made the same mistake the second time these two teams played. I took the under on Derrick Henry. We remember how that game went. The Steelers wanted the ball in his hands when the Ravens were doing the zone read plays. They kept it out of Lamar's hand, and Derrick Henry just ran wild on them. I'm assuming there's going to be a different approach, a different defensive approach, especially in the run game this time around. I'm assuming Mike Tomlin's not going to let Derrick Henry run for 150 yards or whatever he ran for last time. And I'm hoping that maybe they force Lamar Jackson to be more of a runner and hope that wears him down. I think that's not a bad strategy, is trying to get hits on Lamar Jackson and make him wear down in the fourth quarter. If things are still close, maybe you get a break and you win that game. So I'm hoping that's the path to victory for Pittsburgh. At least that's how they view it.
And the Steelers defense is healthier now. You know, Joey Porter's playing in this game. Their pass rushers, though all those guys are playing in this game. So we'll see. Do they have a Tomlin special, ugly it up Saturday night in the cold in Baltimore? And we're all going, wait a minute. How is this the score in the fourth quarter? We'll see if it's that type of game. By the way, end of this episode, we will all have to give our full playoff predictions from the wild card round to the Super Bowl champ. So as you're listening, you might be able to, have some guesses. Oh, Diante likes the Ravens. That's interesting. So keep that in mind, but we will go on the record at the end of this episode. All right. I have the second pick here. I am going to go with the Detroit Lions. I can't pick it. So Ruiz is going to get his Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see who his second team is. But I like the Lions because you can obviously get the guaranteed divisional round. So I'm getting a point there. Maybe I'm a little risk averse, but I also think they got a great shot to get to the Super Bowl. If you just look at the odds, or if you just look at it objectively, second round, who knows who they're going to get. They could potentially get a team like the Washington Commanders, and then you just have to win one big game after that at home, maybe against a team like the Eagles. So I trust their offense. It's hard for me to come up with a scenario where this Lions offense gets shut down for an entire game. A possession, a quarter, weird turnovers, fine, but down to down, snap to snap. I just feel like between Jahmyr Gibbs and the scheme, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and the way Jared Goff's been playing, and Jameson Williams, the element he's added, and of course Ben Johnson tying it all together, I think they're going to be able to put up points every week. And then I probably honestly have some recency bias with the defense, where I just look at it. what they did against Minnesota, and I go, maybe they found some answers and the defense can be competitive enough to keep them in it. So Ruiz, I've got the Lions as my number one pick. You got to be happy about that.
Yeah, that's what I had on my mock draft. I had Diante taking the Ravens first and you taking the Lions second.
Really?
I even anticipated
Wait, you did
you
an
taking the
actual
second
mock? This is incredible.
Yeah, so I'm feeling good about my picks right now. But no, I totally agree with you on the Lions. I think the offense, it's hard to envision them not having a big game. Even if Jared Goff, we've seen Jared Goff had bad games in terms of multiple turnovers, and they've won 2 of those 3 games where he's thrown at least 2 picks, including one where he threw 5 picks against the Texans. So it's tough to imagine them scoring less than like 24 points in a game. Yeah. But I do think the one concern is that last week against Minnesota, Sam Darnold missing some throws kind of, I don't know, misled us a little bit on the defense. Before that, when we last saw the defense, they were getting just run over by the Rams and the Bills. And I mean, not the Rams. Sorry about that. But I don't know if they can replicate that same game plan, even if they play Minnesota again. I think there were some opportunities that Sam Darnold missed out there, and that if Kevin O'Connell just makes a few key tweaks, especially against the cover 0 blitzes, that Minnesota's offense will have a better chance if that is the second round matchup. The Lions would have been my third pick. I would have liked the Ravens. I just didn't want to pick first, and I knew Diante was going to take the Ravens first. But I sacrificed
He's got
them.
Moles in our buildings, Diante. All right, tell your
Spend
staff.
too much time talking to Steven. That's a real problem.
Yeah.
No, Diante writes power rankings, which made it very easy to come up with his big board.
Yeah.
And then
I figured that's why I ended up with the first pick.
I'm not going to lie, I cheated too, and I looked at the Ringer. We have the predictions on the site. I saw both your guys' bracket already.
All right. That's fair. Listen, that's on the record, so that's just doing the work, which I was not willing to put in there. All right, Ruiz, you've got back-to-back the third and the fourth picks. I'm very intrigued to see I know who one's going to be. I'm intrigued to see who the other one's going to be.
Well, you're going to hear the other one first, just to make you guys look worse for letting me get the Chiefs fourth, since it is a snake draft. I'm going to go, and then I could drive down there, their contract demands. You technically got drafted fourth, not third, different draft slide. I'm going to go with the Bills third. That's the team I'm going to take. It was between the Bills and the Eagles. I thought about diversifying my grouping and having an AFC contender and an NFC contender, but I said, screw that. I'd rather have one of these 2 teams. I think these are the 2 quarterbacks I trust the most in the playoffs. The Chiefs, we'll start with the Bills. I think the Bills are the team that I'm most concerned about just because of that defensive success rate. They rank 24th in defensive success rate. I think you can keep Josh Allen off the field. I think when we've seen Josh Allen kind of struggle in those hero moments when he has to play on third and long, and the receivers can't get open and teams are able to keep him in the pocket, I think we've seen troubles or issues with that Bills offense and that offensive approach where they're a little bit run first on first down. But at the end of the day, Josh Allen is playing so well that even if you shut down the Bills' run game, even if they give up 40 points on defense, I think they have a chance to win a football game. And I think whoever comes out of that, if they win this game against the Broncos, which I do think they will, I think they have a good chance of upsetting the Ravens. And I was a little concerned about having the Ravens and seeing them lose in that second round and just not having a Super Bowl contender anymore, which I would have had to do if I had the first pick.
Yeah, that is going to be an epic, assuming we get it, divisional round.
We better get it, man. We better
get it. And they better be healthy too. I don't need any weird finger injury, something going on in the third, fourth quarter when the game's over. Yes, I want Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson healthy in the divisional round. I'm with you. Again, doing the deep dive this week, I was like, well, that kind of concerns me about the Bill. If you look at some turnover stuff, I think their offense, I think, has lost the fewest EPA on turnovers. And I think their defense has gained either it's the most or top 3. But basically, some of the randomness that you look at where you say, don't let this shape kind of the narrative of the team has gone in their favor. I also just looked at it and go, Josh Allen, they're going to have a chance. Really, any game they play, like you said, he's playing at a high level. The stuff I said about Lamar Jackson applies to Josh Allen. They've both been so good. What's going to be the year that they finally break through? Is it going to be one of them this year or not? But just it's been kind of the year of Josh Allen, the narrative. You lose Stephon Diggs. Is it a reset year? And he comes in and he plays some of the best football of his career. So, yeah, I think that certainly makes sense to me in this spot.
My biggest concern is the third down defense. like, I think they've been good on early downs on defense, but we've seen them on occasion get cut up by some good passing offenses and some good quarterbacks. Lamar, CJ Stroud, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Drake May, even Tua had a big game in the second game on third down. So that's my one concern, is that they're going to go up against some of these, good passing games, whether it's Mahomes, whether it's Lamar Jackson. I don't know if it's going to happen in the first round, but I do think they can be victimized on third down, and I am a little worried about that.
It's funny. I think that if the Bills were in the NFC, I might have picked them first. If I had the first pick in this exercise, I do like the way that the roster is constructed. I would say it's kind of interesting. This is probably the worst roster for Sean McDermott to chase a Super Bowl. I know if you ask him in his heart of hearts, he would like to have a better defensive backfield than he has right now. And that's definitely been an issue for them. They've been kind of constrained in how they can play because they can't really trust their safeties. Even their corners, I think they play well when you give receivers a lot of space. I think that the issue for them, and the reason why I had them fifth on my board, was the matchups that they're going to have to take in order to get to the Super Bowl. They don't work in this defense's favor. I think that not only can you take that Sunday night game where they lost to the Ravens and think of some ways that can be instructive. I just think that the matchup is bad because Baltimore can get heavy with personnel in a way that Buffalo's defense can't. And we didn't even need to see that all that often in that game that they played early in the season, because they got the explosive plays to basically put that one away before halftime. And then I think with Kansas City, the thing that they've been able to do throughout the season, and certainly over the last few weeks of the year when they started getting guys back, is they win in the ways that Steven was kind of laying out that makes it the worst on the Bills defense. They are perfectly fine going to third down and asking, the receivers to just get a sliver of space and get 8.5 yards when you need 8, right? And Patrick Mahomes can extend. I think that game that they won was a lot more about Josh Allen going back and watching it than I thought at first. I think I had the third down plays where they're playing man and getting pressure kind of at the front of mind when we were podcasting about it the week that it happened. And going back and watching it, you really just see that was about Josh Allen doing the Patrick Mahomes thing of winning on every third down and having an answer against everything Steve Spagnuolo was throwing at that offense. I do have some issues with those matchups for that reason. But I do think, if you're just talking about a team that is built around its quarterback to win a Super Bowl, outside of the Ravens, you'd probably have and maybe the Eagles, I would say, you'd have a hard time finding an offensive depth chart that is better constructed to get their quarterback to the conference championship game at the worst, and if not, win a Super Bowl.
O-line, they add Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir. Yeah, it's you're right. It looks a lot different, and we talk about it a lot differently now than we did before the season. When you're like, maybe it has. I think we were all like, well, they still have a chance, but how's it exactly going to come together? It has come together well. They've been one of the best offenses in the NFL. All right, let's take a break. Those are the first 3 picks. We'll come back with this thing. Now, Ruiz, my only issue with now, like if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, now people can be like, they went 4th in these idiots, ringer NFL draft. So that might come back to haunt us down the stretch.
Not me individually. I'll be able to say that I picked the Chiefs.
That's true.
And I do, before we go to break, I did have a pick from this game. I almost let slip my mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
When they're playing the Broncos, I'm going with Dalton Kincaid over 33.5 receiving yards. I think that Denver's done a pretty good job of keeping tight ends in the middle of the field pretty well contained for how often they blitz. I just think that the way that Joe Brady likes to call the passing game, getting quick options in a drop back game, especially on early downs, there's going to be a lot of opportunities, I would think, for Dalton Kincaid to find voids in the zone. I think that because of the corner talent that you have on the perimeter with Denver's defense with Patrick Surtain and Riley Moss when he's healthy and playing at his best, there should be a lot more opportunities, I would think, to work the ball into the slot, work it underneath on checkdowns, give screen opportunities off of play actions. I think that if the Bills are going to look their best when they play the Broncos, I think that the pathway to do so is going to be based off the run game and then quick passes. And if they're able to get the ball out in 2.5 seconds, which has been the best version of Josh Allen this year outside of the scrambling, I think that they should be able to keep that offense on schedule pretty well.
I like it. Dalton Kincaid, what was it, 33.5?
33.5, yeah.
Dalton Kincaid over 33.5 receiving yards for Diante's first pick. All right, let's take a break. We come back, get to the second round of this draft. All right, we are back with the NFL playoff confidence draft. First 3 picks, Diante takes the Ravens. I take the Lions. Ruiz takes the Bills. It snakes to Ruiz. He gets back-to-back picks here. And now he just gets to pick I think they're still the Super Bowl favorites. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs. Is that who I'm picking right now?
I think so. If you want to be team content, go somewhere else and have them slip to 5 to me. You can do that.
You know what, Sheil? We made the mistake. But with him, when he sets the line, asks us to set the line for us, we get to challenge him to not be a coward. And I think that usually gets things going. We should have challenged Steven coming into this to not be a coward and leave Kansas City on the board.
That's true. You've been ripping them all season. Been ripping Andy Reid, the scheme. These guys are frauds. Come on, you can't take them now.
I've been ripping the Chiefs as a whole. I've been ripping Andy Reid. I've had an agenda against them. But no, I think Andy Reid has figured some things out. I think the offense looks healthy again. I don't think it looks like the world-beating machine that it was over the peak of this little dynasty that we're watching. But I do think it's good enough. And it seems like the defensive issues that we kind of highlighted at the middle of the year, I think they've solved those too. I think we're seeing sounder defense on the back end, especially in coverage. And that was the issue during the middle of the season. I mean, you're not going to pick against Patrick Mahomes, right? I don't have much more analysis beyond that. I don't think they're the best team on paper. I don't even know if Patrick Mahomes is playing the best quarterback in the NFL. Actually, I know he's not. Lamar Jackson is playing a better brand of quarterback. I think Josh Allen is playing better quarterback than he is right now. But it doesn't matter. In January, Patrick Mahomes always turns out to be the best quarterback in the NFL. And Andy Reid has been here before. So going with the Chiefs. It's boring. I don't care.
They're in a great spot. They only have to beat one of the other two. The other two have to beat two.
It's a free 3 points in my mind because they get the 1 point for skipping the divisional round. And then I think they're going to get the Chargers in the next round. And I think they could win that.
Yeah, there's 3 guys and 2 of them have to face each other. That's just how the math works. So they're in a nice spot where they, potentially get the Chargers or someone else there in the divisional round after a nice long break where anybody who's got a little nagging injury here and there, that has time to heal up. And now you're ready to go. The road to the Super Bowl goes through Arrowhead. And so none of us are going to be surprised if we are doing a post-game pod, February, whatever it is, and saying the Chiefs got the three-peat despite all the conversations we've had this year. So Ruiz gets the steal of the draft, I would say, so far, getting the You're right. Now it even looks better. Now it's like the real steal of the draft. He got him at 4, not even at 3. He got him at 4. So Ruiz takes the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, I have the next pick here. Pick number 5. By the way, those are the 4 teams that have the best Super Bowl odds right now, according to FanDuel. It goes Lions, Chiefs, Ravens, Bills. So we didn't disgrace ourselves yet. And I'm going with the team that's next on that list. And that's the Philadelphia Eagles. I will take here with my second round pick. Of course, you can listen to the Ringers Philly special to hear more about the Eagles. A few things I think they really have going for them here. One is they have all 22 starters healthy for this game against the Green Bay Packers, which is probably the best game of wild card weekend. And so we talk about teams like the Lions, even other teams that have had different injuries, but this team is healthy going into the postseason. That's obviously a big, big deal. Vic Fangio and that defense, that's another reason. They went all the way up to first in defensive DVOA by the end of the season. They were 28th or something last year. So just a terrific coaching job by Vic Fangio, making all the pieces fit, all the new pieces fit on that defense. And then offense, you just look at the depth chart and the talent. And like, even in this Packers game, it's just like, check, Eagles, check. Like, they just are loaded with the offensive line, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley. To me, it's going to come down to, can they make enough plays in the passing game consistently enough when they need to in one of these games when the defense doesn't completely shut down the opponent, or they have a special teams gaffe, or there's a fluky turnover, and now you need the passing game to be really good. Can it be really good? That's my biggest question with this football team. But I think they have a nice path here to get at least to the NFC Championship and potentially to the Super Bowl. Diante, what do you think? How are you feeling about the Philadelphia Eagles?
I mean, Steven knows because he looks at power rankings and he saw above my picks were. This was the number 2 team on the board for me. I think that if you're talking about pathways to the NFC, I don't think there is an easy path for any of these teams. Obviously, Detroit still has to be concerned about their injury issues until guys are back, assuming that they get back. I know that they've had some optimistic timelines on some of their guys. But I think when you look at the Eagles, and this is the same thing I was saying about the Ravens and the AFC, their style of play and their depth chart, their roster from 1 to 53 is a matchup problem for so many teams that they're going to be facing off against in the playoffs, because they can get into 11 personnel and still be a dominant run team because of who Saquon Barkley is. So they don't have to sacrifice one world for another, right? I think in a lot of ways, you look at Minnesota as the the third best team in the NFC, and it's really difficult for them, I think, right now to try to marry up what they want to do between the run and the pass game. And we got to see how, Detroit was able to take advantage of the way that they play defense in that Sunday night game to close out the season. And then with Detroit, all the injuries they've had up front with their front seven, I think if you're Philadelphia, you've got to feel like home or road against either of those teams, you have the defense to be able to keep the game close no matter what. And if you're able to crack any explosive plays at all, I think that you should feel like you can beat anybody you see on your side of the bracket. And I'm not mad at making this pick. Honestly, I thought they might be off the board earlier, if not for maybe just the fact that, they're going to have to see a Detroit more likely than not. And they might have a pretty tight race in the divisional round as well. I just like the way that they're set up right now. I haven't seen anything on tape to dissuade me outside of, some of the hiccups they've had in the passing game. And I just think that they've been able to mitigate that and work around it so well. I feel pretty confidently that this is at worst a conference championship team, save for something just going terribly wrong with turnovers or the defense just being cold for a week. I just think that what we've seen has been pretty stable all year.
Yeah, they're the team that I would trust the most in the NFC. Like, I think they have a higher floor than even the Lions do, because we could see the Lions defense just have one of those games where they give up 45 points and then maybe Detroit's offense can't make up for it. Whereas I think the Eagles, they're going to have a run game. The defense is going to play well. It might not play at an elite level like we've seen for most of the season, but it's not going to get gashed. It's not going to give up 35, 40 points like we've seen Detroit do. So I think they're going to make the NFC Championship game. That's why I had them high on my board. I kind of wanted them to fall to me, but I knew it wasn't realistic if I was going to take the Bills. It was between those two. I would not be surprised if they're in the Super Bowl at the end of this month. They're the team I trust the most in the NFC.
Yeah, they've got different ways they can win. And again, just you look at kind of the talent on offense. And I've said it before on Philly Special that there's never been an Eagles team that has had this much talent on offense. And so if you don't go far, you're going to feel like you really wasted something from a personnel standpoint and a health standpoint there. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that specific wild card matchup when somebody takes the Packers off the board, which just to kind of reset it here. So we've picked the 5 teams that are between plus 320 and plus 650 to win the Super Bowl. So according to FanDuel, there are like 5 teams in one class, and those are the 5 teams we just picked. No other team is better than plus 1,500. Before we get to who Diante's got with his picks, Ruiz, I think you've got a prop as one of your picks from this Eagles game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a Jalen Hurts prop. It seems negative on the surface. I'm going under 212 and a half passing yards, but I just think it's going to be a game where the Eagles can play right-handed, basically. They're going to be able to run the football. They're going to be ahead of the chains. They're going to stay on the football field, and I don't think that Jalen Hurts is going to need to pass for more than 200 yards in this game. I think it's going to be a comfortable win for Philadelphia.
If I had a prop for this one, I was going to go AJ Brown under 87.5 receiving. And for similar reasons as Steven, I don't think that says anything negative about AJ Brown. I just think that for the Packers defense, the only answer they're going to have for that guy is to roll a safety over the top. And if they're doing that in order to take away explosive plays, they don't have enough up front, I don't think, to stop Saquon Barkley. I think that this is going to end up being a big run game and RPO game to Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith, just to take advantage of the simulated pressures, or if Green Bay does get desperate and tries to start blitzing off the edge to be able to take away some run lanes. I think that Philadelphia is going to be able to operate on schedule offensively for the most part in this game. And that offensive line, we've seen it, Green Bay struggles to get pressure when they're only rushing 4. And if your best plan is to rush 4 against an offensive line as good as the Eagles, chances are they're going to be able to get the ball out quickly and underneath. And I think that there's going to be a lot of that in the event that they do have to pass. I think that Philadelphia should be feeling pretty confident in this matchup.
Yeah, there's no doubt. They have an advantage up front with their O-line versus that Green Bay front. All right, Diante, what do you got? Back-to-back picks. Go to you. The draft gets very interesting here as we close out the second round and enter the third round.
To me, I think there's really only two teams to take here.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Minnesota with this pick. I think that they're, of the teams that are left remaining, this is a team I feel like maybe the last team I think is actually capable of making a run to the conference championship. I think that Green Bay's just got too many defensive issues and the matchups just don't work in their favor. I think that, you kind of mentioned some recency bias. I was looking at them be a 1.5 point favorite against the Rams. And I was like, I don't know if there's any reason that line should be there other than the fact that the offense looked terrible against the Lions going into the playoffs. So that's also my pick for this is Vikings as a 1.5 point favorite against the Rams. I think that for them, outside of the fact that they haven't been able to regain what they had in the first half of the year in the run game, everything else has been fine. They've been able to mitigate not having Christian Darrisaw on the field. And I think that, when Sam Darnold does break down under pressure, it's pretty few and far between because you don't have many answers to generate pressure against this offense unless you do what the Lions did and just blitz more guys than they have in to block. They're able to control what defenses do so well because they have Justin Jefferson on the perimeter that requires your attention at all times. I don't think that Jordan Addison is necessarily in that bottom tier of number one receivers, but he's probably like a Devontae Smith in that he's the best of the number two options. He's in the conversation with Devontae Smith, with Jalen Waddle, with T. Higgins. And I think that they've got enough to be able to get hot at any point in time, especially if they're able to play indoors. So if I'm them, you should be looking at that matchup against the Lions feeling like if we got to see them again, we should feel like we can move the ball a little bit better if they do match up with them again. And I think that of the teams that are left, like I said, they're the most likely to end up making the NFC Championship game.
I think the worry is the wild card game and just Matthew Stafford having one of those games like he had against them when they beat them by 9 points in the regular season on Thursday Night Football. And against a Brian Flores defense, we know he wants to blitz. We know he wants to play with the quarterback's mind at least, even if he's not blitzing. Sometimes he's dropping 8 and rushing only 3. But I think Matthew Stafford is one of those quarterbacks that kind of just speeds up time with not only his processing, but his ability to just get throws off against any platform. You get a free rusher, he can throw a sidearm pass around that free rusher. And he usually knows where the outlet is on the field. So if they can just contain Matthew Stafford in that passing game and those wide receivers and hold them to under like 300 yards, I think it's an easy game for Minnesota. And I agree with Diante. I think even looking at the 2 games they played against Detroit obviously sweeps that series, but I think they got what they wanted on the defensive side against Jared Goff, even in the first game. As long as they get a better game out of the offense and Jared Goff doesn't black out on third down, I think they have a chance of upsetting Detroit in Detroit.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys on this game. I'm with Diante. I like the Vikings in this game. I'm trying to say don't put too much stock into what just happened last week. But I also was wondering, like, there was a lot of talk about McVay and should he have rested his starters in week 18. And if you look at that Rams team, they had that amazing showing against the Bills and their next 3 games were not very crisp offensively. And I was almost wondering, like, there's Puka Nakua's had injuries this year. Matthew Stafford is older and has injuries this year. I sort of felt like that read to me, like they're like, McVay's like, if we want to make a real run, I need these guys rested and healthy, and we're going to have to face a team like the Vikings anyway. So I want to get them rested. So I'm very curious to see what that offense looks like on Monday night. You're right. Matthew Stafford could just be on a heater, and they could pick this Vikings defense apart, and the Rams could be playing in the divisional round. I don't think that Rams team has enough to like go on a real run. Like, I think Stafford can do it once where you go, he looks like the best quarterback in the NFC this week. I don't think at this stage of his career, given what we've seen this season, he can do that for like 3 weeks in a row. But it's what makes Monday night interesting. And then the other thing, I talked about quarterbacks who have the most at stake this playoffs, and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have a lot at stake for one reason. Sam Darnold, I spent 17 weeks going, I don't know if I totally, believe what I'm seeing in Sam Darnold. And then you're right. It was just one bad game last week against the Lions. It was a bad game. If it happens again, I mean, I don't know. There's going to be like, well, all right, he came back down to earth. And when you needed him in a big spot in those 2 games, he didn't come through. And now all the conversations about what should the Vikings do at quarterback? If you're a quarterback needy team, how much do you pay Sam Darnold? I understand it's a 1 or 2 game sample, but I do think it's also kind of fair given the entire body of work with Darnold. So I think he sneakily has a lot at stake, not only this weekend, but during this playoff run.
I mean, the issue is that if Sam Darnold has another cold game, chances are they're going home because they haven't had another answer offensively. This run game isn't bad. It's about average, but it's fallen far from what it was in the first month or two of the year where they were able to get a bunch of explosive runs. Aaron Jones looked like he still had a lot of juice left in his legs, and they still had Christian Darrisaw as somebody they could run behind or use as a backside blocker in their outside zone scheme. They've become really reliant on Sam Darnold to have the answers as a drop back passer. And for the most part this year, that has worked out well for them. So again, I'm with you, Sheil. It is a little nerve wracking picking the Vikings after seeing what it looked like against the Lions with the game plan that I think is pretty reminiscent of what they're going to see against the best teams in a playoff environment with the blitzing, with the tight coverage, and challenging Sam Darnold to have to make throws that are uncomfortable for him. The only reason why I'm staying in on this is because the defense has been great all year long. And I do think that Kevin O'Connell, more often than not, is going to have an answer for his quarterback, and that might have just been a one-off occurrence.
I am a little worried because the Rams they can take away the deep shots. They can play a style of coverage that works against what the Vikings have done best. Like you said, they've been a drop-back passing game, an explosive drop-back passing game this season. It kind of reminds me of the 2021 Rams and what their passing game turned into when they had Matthew Stafford for that first year. Kevin O'Connell, I believe, was in Los Angeles during that time too. And if you can take away those deep shots and force Sam Darnold to be a more conservative quarterback. We know he doesn't want to play like that. He's a swashbuckling quarterback. Like, he's going to throw it downfield. He's going to push the ball downfield. He's not going to be a check down Charlie. And the Rams, I don't think they have a lot of defensive talent. I think, the whole is better than the sum of their parts, I think I totally botched that saying, but you know what I'm saying?
No, that was right. Because I always screw that up, and you got it right, actually.
No, I was more so caught up with swashbuckling. I was blindsided by swashbuckling. That was my thing.
I was still feeling the effect of swashbuckling that I couldn't get the next one right. But no, I think if you force that shot, it only takes one or two mistakes from Sam Darnold, and I think he'll throw you the football as long as you catch the football. I think the Rams got a chance of at least keeping this game close.
Both these quarterbacks ranked, I think, 25th. In turnover-worthy play percentage this season. So that has the potential to be kind of a wild game on Monday night for sure. That's going to be a fun one. All right, so you go with the Vikings here. Diante, that was your last pick of the second round, right? Okay, what do you got? Yep. What's your next one?
The next one is going to be, and I was like Steven, when I was putting together the board, I was like, I think this might be how it plays out. I don't know if I want to take two teams from the same conference that are both in the wild card round, because it is a little tricky if I'm thinking about points. But when we're just talking about team quality, I think the best one remaining right now is the Green Bay Packers. Even though I do think that they have about as hard a matchup of any outside of maybe the Steelers trying to keep pace with the Ravens. I think that matchup wise, this is probably about as poor for the Packers as it is for the Steelers in their wild card game. But this is more so just leaning on the quarterback. I think that the quarterback does have the answers where if they're able to clear this bar, this is maybe the last team that I think can get hot enough in the passing game, even without Christian Watson, for them to be able to give most of the teams in the playoffs a difficult day, if not win outright.
Yeah, I picked the Eagles in this game, but I was going back and forth going like, are people not giving a Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love combination here enough? It feels like most people are on the Eagles. I haven't seen a lot of people, and we'll get to all our picks at the end here. I just haven't seen a lot of people picking the Packers. Now, I think part of that is that Jordan Love had the elbow injury, but he was a full practice participant on Thursday. And I just look at it like that coach wins a high percentage of his games. They just went on the road last year, and Jordan Love was pretty much flawless. I know it was a different team in the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm with you, Diante. I think it feels like all season I've been waiting and waiting. They have another level to get to. And like you look at the end of the season, they're still 11-6, but they didn't have that like 1 month stretch where I was like, they're the best team in the NFC. I feel great about it. And part of that was Jordan Love had some injuries, and they lose Jair Alexander defensively, and then now Christian Watson goes down. So there were a bunch of factors for that. But I don't know, Ruiz, you've been high on the Packers like I have. Do they have a sleeperish run? And even if it's not the most likely, does it exist that they have a sleeperish run here in the NFC?
I just hate this matchup for them in the wild card round. I honestly, they might have been higher on my board if they weren't playing the Eagles. If they were playing the Bucks, for instance, I might have picked them. But I just have too much concern about that defense, especially when they can't play on the front foot, when they can't get you into obvious passing situations. I just can't envision a scenario where they're playing the Eagles and the Eagles can't run the football against them. I think the Eagles are going to find a way to run the football against them. And if the Packers have to sell out and do some things that they're not used to doing, maybe play a little man coverage, I think that's when you get burnt by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside. It's just hard to envision outside of a Matt LaFleur masterclass and Jordan Love looking like he did against Dallas in the wildcard round, which is certainly within the range of outcomes. I think it's just at one extreme of the range of outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you look at what the Packers like to do defensively. It's play zone, rush four, hunt turnovers. Jalen Hurts has been pretty conservative with the football in the second half of the season. I feel like we always talk about the turn downs on Jalen Hurts' film. I think this is a game where it's going to be like, you don't need to force that. You know, Xavier McKinney is back there. You don't need to force it because of what Ruiz said. You're going to be able to run the football when you need to pass it. You should be able to be able to pass protect. And so the way you lose this game, I'm with you, is if you turn it over on offense, or if it's just we're talking about Sunday night, holy cow, Matt LaFleur, right, or holy cow, Jordan Love
throws for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Oh my God, they cooked the best defense in football and they cooked Vic Fangio, which to Ruiz's point, that's in play. Ruiz's best description of any player this year that I've been stealing throughout the week on any interview, Jordan Love is the most ambitious passer in the NFL. And so he's going to try those. And if he connects on some of those, that's Green Bay's way to winning this game and pulling the upset. I've actually got a prop for this one. I'm taking the under, despite what everything I said. Jordan Love under 226.5 passing yards in this game. I just like the Eagles coverage matchup against those Packers wide receivers. They don't have Christian Watson. I think that takes away an explosive element. And then just the game script you guys talked about. I think the Eagles will be able to string together long drives, so maybe he won't have as many attempts as some might expect. So I've got under Jordan Love 226.5 passing yards. Go ahead.
I don't have a prop on this, but I was kind of looking at Jordan Love over 5.5 rushing yards. I know he's not much of a scrambler, but I feel like if they're going to have any opportunity to stay alive as a playoff team, Jordan Love has got to get over his reticence to scramble. Otherwise, this offense is just going to see 2-man, 1 robber, a bunch of just like man coverage looks. And he does not have a receiving core that separates very well against man. And he does not have his best downfield target with Christian Watson being out. I think that this is going to be a game. If they are genuinely the kind of threat in the NFC that I think they are, Jordan Love has got to approach this game with the by any means necessary kind of attitude. And the first time he sees man, he's going to have to tuck it and run himself, just to put in the back of your defensive coordinator's mind that if he sees a look that he can scramble against, that he would need to do it and that he can do it. So we haven't seen it enough this year. I think that's been a big issue down the stretch for them, but definitely against Minnesota, I thought there were plenty of opportunities where he could have escaped if he would have tucked it early. But I think that ambition that Steven was talking about for him as a passer, that's one of the few ways that it can work against him. I think that he misses some opportunities to extend plays outside of the pocket or just scramble outright. And I think that he's going to need to do that against Philadelphia on those high leverage, obvious passing downs if they're going to stay, viable in this game, in that playoff game when they see each other.
It's almost like early career Justin Herbert, where you wanted to see him scramble more, but instead of like checking the ball down, Jordan Love just says, screw it, I'm just going to throw it downfield anyway. I don't care. And maybe it will work out.
Yeah.
This obviously isn't on the board for FanDuel, but I wish I could bet that a white Eagles defender is going to get an interception in this game, because they're all in the middle of the field. You got plenty to choose from. They're all in the middle of the field too, and Jordan Love's going to throw in the middle of the field. He'll get one eventually.
FanDuel, if you want, you got the special ringer tab. If you want to add the Steven Ruiz special there, white Eagles defender picks off Jordan Love. I don't know what the odds would be. We're talking Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship. Moving on. Let's take a break. This is what better time to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll continue in the third round of the NFL playoff confidence draft. All right, we are back on the Ringer NFL show. We are in the third round. Diante made his 2 picks, the Packers and the Vikings. Teams left are the Bucks, the Chargers, the Commanders, the Rams, the Texans, the Steelers, and the Broncos. Again, a reminder, 2 of these teams will not get picked. I am going with the Los Angeles Chargers as my next pick here. I don't know if this is a surprise or if you guys had them lower on your board or what.
Not a surprise. You telegraphed this one.
Okay.
I knew you were going to pick it.
They're favored in Houston. I said it before. Their offense has played like 3 of their best games of the season down the stretch. Maybe it's just coincidence and small sample, but I don't know. It's looked pretty good. It hasn't looked fluky. Justin Herbert is healthy. Jim Harbaugh is their head coach. Maybe it's a square pick, but I really like them to win this game at Houston. And then the take I would never say behind a mic, that I would only say among friends here, is that I would give them an actual shot at Kansas City. If I'm just looking at quarterback and coach in that spot against a team that is a very good team, but maybe not as good as they've been in previous weeks. We'll see where I am potentially with this next week. Maybe we won't even be talking about it because they'll lose in the wild card round. But that's the reason I'm going with the Los Angeles Chargers in this spot.
This is my first upset of the draft. I really wanted the Chargers. I was worried that you would pick them. I was hoping you would pick the Commanders over them. And you didn't, but you have been talking about the Chargers for the last month and about them being frisky in the playoffs. So it was on my radar.
The breadcrumbs were there.
Congratulations!
There all right, that's my pick here. This Chargers Texans game. I mean, I don't know. I cannot pick the Texans given what I've seen from their offense this season. Now, if you told me their defense just puts the clamps down and the Chargers do not have a wide receiver open and that Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter combine for 4 sacks and that Justin Herbert's getting pushed to the ground all game long, I can buy that aspect of it and say, all right, that's the Texans' path to victory. But they've just been such a frustrating team for me. I think partially because of how much I actually do like CJ Stroud. They've just been such a frustrating team for me that I cannot go with them in the first round. So I don't know. Again, I feel like every time we talk about the Texans, I lead the question with, I don't know. Do you guys have anything new to say about them? But Diante, in this spot, do you confidently like the Chargers? Do you like the Texans? Do you think it's a toss-up? Where are you with this game?
I think we kind of mentioned it in the recap show coming out of week 18 when we were talking about the matchups. I think if you're just going player for player, these 2 teams probably should be matching up pretty well. And I do think that when the Chargers have the ball, we're going to get some pretty elite play calling from a defensive perspective up against a quarterback that has all the answers in Justin Herbert. Like, I'm really fascinated to see how he works against the Texans defense. I do have a prop for this game, and it's Herbert to go over 20.5 rushing yards, because I think that's going to be what the deciding factor is that Herbert can add a number in the run game, both on designed runs, and we've seen it as of late, really all season, as a scrambler as well when things aren't available. I think that this is going to be a big test for me as to whether or not I can trust them to stay in range if they do see Kansas City in the next round of the playoffs. But if you're looking, I mean, this isn't just about the numbers being better over the last month for them. You mentioned that Chiefs game. That was kind of the start of them tinkering with early down passing, was around that range of the season. And I think that what we've seen over the last 4 to 5 weeks is that they've really leaned into that being their early down identity. On first and second down, they want to throw the ball 12 to 15 times a game, just to give them an opportunity, I think, to run the ball into better boxes and better down and distance scenarios. And we will see a good amount of that with all the man coverage that Houston's going to play, that Justin Herbert's going to have to be precise. He's going to have to use his legs. I think that that's what the deciding factor is going to be. I'm not confident in the Chargers outside of this wild card game. But I do think that if there is a quarterback in the AFC that's not playing on one of the favorites that can get in the way, be a thorn in the side of the contenders that we've already talked about, it's pretty clearly the Chargers.
They've turned into, to your point, Diante, the 6th most pass-heavy team in the NFL. Remember what we were talking about after 2 weeks, after 4 weeks? But you're right. It's become play action at the 2nd highest rate of any team in the NFL and throwing the football on early downs. And that's their best formula. Put the ball in your best player's hands in advantageous situations when you might not have the most talented pass catching group.
It's got to give Greg Roman a heartburn. Every first down, he's got to call
someone
pass.
had to force him into it, but he has been doing it. And then on the other side of the ball, CJ Stroud, 33rd out of 36 quarterbacks in success rate against zone coverage. So Chargers, obviously a zone heavy team. I like their coaching staff to be able to cook some things up to slow down that Texans offense that usually is getting in its own way anyway. All right. So I've got the Chargers there. Ruiz, you get your final 2 picks here. We've got left the Bucks, Commanders, Rams, Texans, Steelers, and Broncos. Who are you going with?
I'm going to take the Bucks. I didn't think I was going to be able to get the Bucks, but I do. I don't like them as a possible championship contender, but I do like them to go on a run here. I think they can match up well with the Commanders. I think we saw that in week 1. We saw Liam Cohen really have his way with Dan Quinn's defense. I think that was something that stood out to all of us after that first week. And Liam Cohen hasn't slowed down since then. And the offensive line has gotten better and the run game has gotten better. I think Baker Mayfield is more comfortable in the scheme. I know they don't have Chris Godwin anymore, but with the way Mike Evans is playing and kind of carrying this passing game, to be honest, especially the downfield aspect of it, I think the Bucs can put up 30 points in this game. And I know Todd Bowles' defense can be exploited, and we've seen Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury kind of figure things out until last week, I should say. But it's a rookie on the road in his first playoff game, going up against an offense that has the ability to put you behind the change and change the game script on you. So I'm a little worried about Washington's offense. We've talked all year about how they're kind of a front-running offense, and I'm worried that Tampa Bay will put them behind the game script and they'll have to catch up, and maybe we'll see some mistakes from the rookie quarterback.
Yeah, I think if you're the Commanders, this is the kind of offense you don't want to see, because this is the most likely scenario where now Jaden Daniels is going to have to be at his absolute best on a possession-by-possession basis. And that's not to say he's not capable, right? We've seen him extend plays. We've seen the scrambling be there for him. We've obviously seen him be able to work around pressure in a way that we did not anticipate coming into the season, in a way it did not necessarily look like it was going to be when they played in week 1, right? There were a lot of struggles with this passing offense, trying to get guys open downfield early in the year. I think that for that reason, you should feel good about the Bucs, but I think that, and the Bucs are 9th on my board as well, so I'm not surprised to see them go off here. I think that for me, the reason why I've had so much trust in them throughout the year has just been the growth of Baker Mayfield. I think at the start of the year, there were a lot of screens, a lot of quick passes off of play action, allowing for yards after the catch for Chris Godwin and the rest of this receiving core. And that obviously is still an evident part of their offensive strategy, is trying to get the ball out of his hands quickly. I just think that what we've seen the last 4 to 5 weeks is, as defenses maybe invest more resources in taking that stuff away, we're starting to see Baker Mayfield stand in the pocket, try to find his second and third throw, and push the ball downfield when it's time to push the ball downfield. We've obviously seen the scrambling in key opportune moments as well down the stretch of the year, and they can run the ball basically on anybody they want to, because they've been so creative and innovative. They've done a really good job at developing the interior of this offensive line in a way that it hadn't been over the last 3, 4, 5 seasons, really. So I think that while I don't think that the matchups work in their favor in any round past the wild card, I think that picking the Bucs is smart here. I think that they can probably bank you a pretty easy point in this game.
They're the one team left that is favored in this weekend's games. And like, the offensive line has helped Baker Mayfield become that type of passer. No one's getting pressure on them right now. And I don't think Washington's going to be able to get pressure on them. And I think Baker Mayfield's going to be able to throw the ball downfield. They've been able to just expand their menu of calls on offense, whether it's like run game, screen game, RPO game, downfield passes, quick game. They can do anything because of the offensive line, because of the skill players, and then because Baker Mayfield is playing a better brand of football than we've seen from him at any point in his career.
Yeah, it's Liam Cohen. 2 thumbs up. I mean, one of the best schemed offenses of the year. No doubt about it. I actually have a prop from this game. I'm taking Baker Mayfield over 238.5 passing yards, even in a game like last week where it feels like they're struggling in the first half. All of a sudden they get going. So it feels like they have an ability to eventually find answers. I like passing yards because even if he makes a couple mistakes or sack or fumble or interception, that doesn't affect my passing yards. You still got to pass the football. And I see the game script the way you guys do. I mean, this could be a shootout where these teams are just going back and forth, scoring a lot of points. And it's just like, who's going to make that one mistake? Who's going to punt first type game. So Baker Mayfield over 238.5 passing yards is my next prop.
Whichever quarterback ends this game with the most scrambles, his team loses. That's my pick. Like, Diante highlighted Baker Mayfield's timely scrambles, which I agree with. He's had some very key scrambles on 3rd down. But we got to talk about the outtakes. That man scrambles a lot, and he scrambles for 2 yards a lot. I think he thinks he's a little faster than he is. And if he leans into it a little too hard, like against the Saints, if you go back and watch that Saints game, he was scrambling his ass off too much. He was trying to leave the pocket when he shouldn't have. And that's why they fell behind early. Hopefully he doesn't do it in this game. All right. That is your 3rd pick, Ruiz. Who do you have as your 4th and final pick to round out your roster? I'm going to take the Rams. I'm just going to go by betting line. They're underdogs by 1.5 points. That's the best value I have left on the board. I'm not taking the Texans. I'm definitely not taking the Broncos or Steelers. The Rams, I think the Vikings win this game, but there is a timeline where Matthew Stafford throws for like 350 yards and those receivers combine for 250 of them. And they win this game in a shootout.
Yeah, no, we hit on that game. I'm with you. I think that's their path. We're going to just go Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua. Wow, they tore apart that Vikings defense. I think that is their path to a victory on Monday night. All right, it comes back to me here, and I will go with the Washington Commanders as my next pick. Maybe the Jaden Daniels magic continues. Maybe they just go up and down the field and score against that Bucs defense that I don't think is a great defense. I think you're going to have opportunities on the outside as well. I think if Jaden Daniels scrambles, that's probably fine for the Commanders, more so than it might be for the Bucs with Baker Mayfield. So we'll see. You're right. There's a lot of like stats out there about rookie quarterbacks in their first playoff game, or even quarterbacks in their first playoff games typically have been horrible against the spread. The Commanders are 3-point underdogs in this game, but they certainly have a shot here. I've got another prop from this game, my last one, Terry McLaurin over 58.5 receiving yards. I just think like he gets a lot of targets. He gets a lot of volume. They're going to have to move the football. This isn't going to be a low scoring game. And I don't love that Bucs defense. So Terry McLaurin over 58.5 receiving yards. That is my last prop pick. All right, there we go. So now it goes to Diante, and maybe the most interesting pick of the draft. Honestly, he has got the Texans, the Steelers, and the Broncos. So basically this comes down to, I don't think this is about upside. This is, who does he think has the best chance to win one game in the wild card round? I think this is why Ruiz didn't want the first pick. This is honestly why I was not going to go with the first pick when I had second choice. Diante got stuck with it. Who do you got, Diante?
This is tough for me because two teams here are more than a touchdown underdog and are dealing with some really rough matchups. And then you're also talking about a rookie quarterback. You're talking about a team that's had bad quarterback play in the Steelers, and then the Texans with this broken offensive line and an offensive infrastructure that we've been saying for the last month and a half might lead to their offensive coordinator being fired. Like you can't possibly ask for a worse three to have to choose from here. But I think for the purposes of this segment, I'm going to take the team that I think is closest in matchup and maybe has a unit and maybe has the best unit of these groups. I'm taking the Broncos for that reason. I think
I thought you were leaving. I thought it was Houston.
I thought you were going a different
There's no
direction.
way. I've watched too much Houston offense. I don't see it for them. I think that they can maybe keep this Chargers game close. I don't expect them to win it. And I think if they had to play in the divisional round, you could pick any of the top three teams in the AFC. And I think that they would just get run off the field. They can't keep pace.
I thought I was going to have to be the guy that was like, I think the Broncos have a chance to make this game competitive, but apparently I'm not. I think Diante might be with me here, but I really do think they have the perfect setup. Not the perfect, because I'd rather have like Patrick Mahomes or something, but of the lower seeds, the perfect setup to kind of pull in a major upset here, especially if you're comparing it to the Steelers and the Ravens. I think the Broncos have a better chance of pulling this off just because of how they run the football.
Yes.
What they're going up against on defense. We know the Bills are going to live in nickel. Last year when they played, Sean Payton, I know it's a different team, but not really. It's just like the quarterback change and Sutton came back. But they played a lot of like two wide receiver sets, a lot of 21 personnel, a lot of 12 personnel against that Buffalo nickel. And I think that that's what we're going to see in this game. They're going to try to keep Josh Allen off the field. And if they can do it, I think there's a chance that they make the game competitive just because of how good we've seen this defense play when it's at its best. And it kind of matches up with what Buffalo doesn't do so well on offense. I don't know. Like Buffalo on third and long hasn't been that great. Buffalo against man coverage hasn't been that great, especially on third down. And I think Vance Joseph needs a little more credit for what he's done this year. I think we all think of Vance Joseph. We think of him blitzing a ton. We think of him playing a bunch of man coverage. But on third down and on second and long in passing situations, when you watch them, he has a deep menu of calls, and they're running a lot of zone coverage on passing downs. I think it's like 75%. a lot of different types of zone, cover 2, cover 3, quarters, all that. They're disguising. So that kind of like multiplies your options. They got like 5 different ways of getting into Tampa 2 and into cover 3. And I think if you could just make Josh Allen think a little bit, maybe he throws an interception or 2. Maybe he makes a mistake, and maybe you run the football very well and you're ahead of the chains on offense and you keep Josh Allen on the sideline. I think there is a path to victory for Denver. I don't think they're going to win this game. There's a reason why the Bills were my second pick, but I could see them covering.
That's why I'm going with the Broncos. We're talking about 1-game samples. I just think stylistically, Denver can get into those 12 and 21 personnel looks and see Buffalo staying in nickel on the other side. And they can start designing some very particular runs that can give that defensive front some trouble. We've seen it with Buffalo throughout the season when they play against teams that get into heavier personnel. Them keeping 5 DBs on the field has been an issue. Denver's 8th in the NFL, if I remember right, in 10-plus yard runs against defenses with 5 DBs on the field. And they can really control, I would think, the pace of this game if they are able to get some runs together, especially on early downs. And we've seen them really kind of design a passing game around Bo Nix on the move, on bootlegs, out of the pocket, giving him throws that are going to be available to him when he inevitably scrambles or has to extend or tries to leave out the back door of the pocket. I don't think that this is a good situation for Denver. I can definitely see us talking about this game saying, oh, it was interesting for the first half of the first quarter. And then Josh Allen led 2 or 3 scoring drives. And then that was it because the Broncos couldn't keep pace. I just think that if Vance Joseph is able to cause them any trouble in the first half, cause the Bills any trouble in the first half, and they're able to strike something up in the run game, this game can get weird. And I think that they have an opportunity to cover the 8.5-point spread. And I think that what's ultimately going to hold them up is I don't expect them to get the deep play action shot, but they've been doing that well down the second half of the year. They've been able to find Marvin Mims at times. They've obviously been able to find Cortland Sutton 1 or 2 times a game on these big throws down in the middle of the field or on the perimeter. I think that there is a viable way for them to hold on in this game. And if they can, obviously it's a playoff environment. You never know which way it breaks, especially with how aggressively they play defensively. But I couldn't trust the Steelers or Texans to do the same in their matchups. Even though the Texans have a great defense, I just don't trust that offense to have answers against who they're playing against.
It's kind of easy to forget because the quarterbacks are so different, but these teams are basically the same on early downs on offense. It's obviously Joe Brady, a Sean Payton disciple, so that's not much of a hot take there. And Denver has the defensive personnel to kind of handle that style more than Buffalo. But I think Buffalo has a talent advantage overall, and that's where the concern is. My third prop is actually from this game. I'm going to go Marvin Mims under 41.5 receiving yards. And this is ultimately my concern with the Broncos in this game. The Bills are the best team in the NFL at defending passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. And we've heard all year about the Broncos and how they've thrown a bunch of those passes, and they're one of the more efficient teams on those passes. If Buffalo can take that away from Denver's offense and kind of make them play left-handed, make Bo Nix play left-handed, I do think it could get ugly. He's another rookie on the road, massive underdog. And as Sheil said, rookies don't do well in their playoff debuts.
I'm with you guys. My line on this was Denver's style of play lends itself to being competitive. I mean, they only lost 1 game all season by more than 7 points. Bo Nix is top 5 or 6 in turnover worthy, lowest turnover worthy play percentage, lowest pressure to sack rate. So they've done a good, they'll have 3 and outs, but for the most part, not all the time, for the most part, they've avoided kind of the catastrophic mistakes on offense, and you just punt, and then, with that defense, you see, can you get a stop? So I think they would probably need maybe 2 turnovers or something, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. I'm kind of with you. Now, this is probably going to mean that the Bills are going to win this game 40-3 or something, since we're all saying, hey, watch out for Denver. But I don't disagree with what you guys are saying there about this game. So there you go. The Broncos are the last pick in the NFL playoff confidence draft. I like that, Diante. You went away from the point spreads with what you actually thought, because Texans are at home, 2.5-point underdog. So they would be like, no, they've got a better chance. But you're like, I don't want it's like a fantasy draft. Sometimes you're like, I don't want this person. I want someone else.
I don't care what the ADP is.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good football player, so I'm not taking that guy.
That's right. So the Texans and the Steelers end up on the board. If one of them goes to the Super Bowl, we all will have to do something embarrassing because we left them off of our draft. Let's go over our final picks here and then make sure we got to all of the props. Diante ends up with the Ravens, the Vikings, the Packers, and the Broncos. Let's see, you got 2 AFC, 2 NFC. I like that.
It is entirely possible that we leave this weekend and I only have one team left to get me any points.
It's possible. Yeah. No, I think you'll have 2. I'll set the over at 1.5.
Yeah, I'm expecting 2. I'm expecting Minnesota and Baltimore to win, but I'm definitely going to be clinched going through wild card weekend.
I've got the Lions, the Eagles, the Chargers, and the Commanders. Looking back at it, game theory wise, I probably, if I could have gotten an AFC team, maybe that with that first pick, maybe I should have gone Chiefs. Then I maybe circle back and get the Eagles. Then you have a chance to get the Super Bowl matchup correct, where now I feel very good that I've got the NFC team, Lions or Eagles. Not definitely, but I've got the 2 favorites. But I spread myself thin. All I got is the Chargers in the AFC. So that's my point of reflection there. Bad job by me. And then Ruiz has the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bucks, and the Rams. So you're kind of like me, Ruiz, where you don't really have a true contender in the NFC, but you got 2 good ones in the AFC. How are we feeling?
This is how I plotted it. I plotted it so you couldn't get an AFC team and an NFC team. I knew if I picked second, you would get the Lions and the Bills, and I wasn't having it. I saw your bracket. That was the Super Bowl you picked, and I wasn't allowing it to happen. That was the main reason why.
Spoilers. We still got predictions coming up. All right. There you go. All right. So those are our teams. It'll be fun we'll track that every week, see how we're doing here. And let's just recap our props for the people. I will go first. Our picks. Again, this is part of our season-long picks contest. I've got Jordan Love under 226.5 passing yards. I've got Baker Mayfield over 238.5 passing yards. And I've got Terry McLaurin over 58.5 receiving yards. Ruiz, what are your 3 picks?
I have Marvin Mims under 41.5 receiving yards, Jalen Hurts under 212.5 passing yards, and Derrick Henry under 99.5 rushing yards. A lot of unders.
Good.
And then for me, I've got Vikings as a 1.5 point favorite. I've got Dalton Kincaid going over 33.5 receiving yards, and I've got Justin Herbert going over 20.5 rushing yards.
All right. There you go. All right. Let's take one more break. We come back and we will quickly recap we'll go over our playoff predictions and Super Bowl picks. All right. We are back on the Ringer NFL show. Thanks to our friend Dan Comer. He went back and listened to our preseason pod to see what were these idiots talking about back in August. Maybe more so me, an idiot, than you guys looking at these. Diante Super Bowl matchup in the preseason. Ravens over Lions. You're looking, that's pretty good, Diante, for Super Bowl matchup. Your worst playoff calls were the Jets and the Bears. And your best off the wall prediction was Jameis Winston finishes the season as the Browns starting quarterback, and Kevin Stefanski and the Browns mutually part ways, not because Deshaun is hurt, but because it's such a disastrous marriage. How do you feel about some of those preseason prognostications?
I mean, I feel great about the team picks. I will say the Brown situation is a disaster.
You were right. You were directionally right.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I was definitely pointing. I was aiming in the right direction for sure. So I actually think that was a much better for me coming out of it than I thought it might have been as I was making the picks. I was 100% prepared for the Ravens to just have a disaster of a season. And I'm glad that it didn't happen that way.
You did a good job. Ravens over Lions. All right. I had Bengals over Packers. Listen, I still think Bengals, just give them one more week here, get that defense a little healthier. I think they can still make a run. So I'm not giving up on that one. Bengals over Packers. Worst playoff call. I had the Bears in at 10-7, and I had the Jaguars in. I was debating Jaguars or Chargers, and I thought Dougie P, Trevor Lawrence, they're going to get in. Terrible pick. Jaguars in the playoffs. Best off the wall prediction. Again, thanks to Dan Comer for putting these together. There will be a head coach handshake altercation. I specifically named Nick Sirianni, and he kind of had one with Zach Ertz, not with another head coach, but with a former player. So yeah, I'm feeling good about that one. I can't say that was like the hardest thing to predict if you're, paying very close attention to the football team as I am. But I feel pretty good about that one. And then Ruiz, Super Bowl matchup still on the table. Ravens over Packers. You just need the Packers to make a little noise here. Your champ is still certainly in there. Worst playoff call, Cowboys winning the NFC East. They were not close to that. Of course, you had the Dak injury, but even before that, they were not looking like a playoff team. And then best off the wall prediction, Tom Brady is one and done as a commentator, and there will be co-MVPs. How are you feeling, Ruiz?
Well, obviously, I think Tom Brady's coming back, but like spiritually,
is he definitely? I don't know. Is he just going to go run the Raiders? That seems like within the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, there's a lot of time between now and week 1, 2025. So maybe he won't be on Fox by then. But I feel good about the other one. Like I know
the co-MVP one is a hell of a car. Yeah. That's a hell of a call. I think that's within the realm of possibility.
Mathematically, probably not possible just because of like the order choice thing they got going on now. But spiritually, like it feels like there should be co-MVP. Honestly, we could avoid so much argument, so many debates, so much yelling if we just give it to both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Who cares? Like we've done it before.
To me, the only reason why there wouldn't be co-MVPs is because of voter fatigue with Lamar. Just the fact that there is another candidate to vote for, and the fact that you do have the ranked choice with some voter fatigue, I think it's possible that he ends up bumped down a few ballots. But I do think, like Steven says, spiritually, these probably should be the top 2 vote getters.
I wouldn't have an issue with that.
Yeah, and the reason why I said this take, if you go back and listen, is because like it's so impossible to compare these contributions to their offense. Like these guys are just like the focal points of their offense. Like anything you could say about one of them, you could probably say about the other one. And they both have good supporting cast. So I think the 2 fan bases need to stop with that angle. I feel like they're both trying to tear down their supporting cast to kind of.
There's not a significant difference. Yeah,
there isn't.
There really isn't. All right, so that was a good call. All right, now we go on the record a month from now. Which of these predictions is going to look the dumbest? Let's start with the AFC, and we'll just go round by round. So don't go ahead of yourselves, and then we'll all get to who we have in the Super Bowl, and then we'll do the same for the NFC. So in the AFC, I have the Bills beating the Broncos, the Ravens beating the Steelers, and the Chargers beating the Texans in the first round. Actually, we might not need to waste time. Do you guys have anything different there in the first round?
No.
Okay. So we don't have to waste our time. All right. In the second round, the Baltimore Ravens go to Orchard Park. And I ended up picking the Bills. Again, all the analytical part of my brain said, Sheil, the Ravens are a more complete team. They're better. I just thought, I don't know. Maybe it's the year of Josh Allen. He's at home, and I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. And then in the other matchup, I couldn't be so courageous to pick the Chargers. Maybe we'll talk about that game next week, but I've got the Chiefs. So I've got a Chiefs-Bills AFC championship. Ruiz, how does your divisional round in the AFC play out?
I do have the Chiefs beating the Chargers. I didn't really give that one second thought, just because of the Patrick Mahomes effect. I think on paper the teams do match up pretty well, especially for Los Angeles. But I couldn't do it. I'm going to take the Ravens. I'm going to take them going into Buffalo. Lamar finally, beats one of these elite quarterbacks in the playoffs. Maybe I'm just trying to set things up. I picked the Bills in the competition. I have the Ravens as my official prediction. So.
Little hedge.
Either way. Yeah.
I like that. All right. And Diante, your divisional round in the AFC.
Look, I've been the resident Chiefs doubter all year long, but I'm not stupid. They're going to win in the divisional round. I have Baltimore beating Buffalo. I think that's going to end up. We'll probably go back to that game coming out of the playoffs and say that's the one that we're rewatching the most in the offseason. I think no matter what, whether it's a mess because of the weather, even if the quarterbacks aren't necessarily playing A+ games, I think that just the drama and stakes when those two teams match up with each other, we'll probably come back to that one for quite a while.
Getting so excited about that game. Just thinking about the cold weather in Buffalo, Lamar all covered up versus Josh Allen. That's going to be fun. All right. So in the conference championship, I've got Bills, Chiefs in Arrowhead, and I'm going to stick with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills finally get over the hump, beat the Chiefs, and get to the Super Bowl. Ruiz, you've got Ravens at the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Who do you got?
I mean, if they went into Buffalo and won, they might as well go into Kansas City and win. And Lamar gets his happy ending. He gets to beat two elite quarterbacks in the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm going with Lamar. I think one of these two quarterbacks, whether it's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, is finally due. I mean, I'm not dumb enough to pick against the Chiefs usually, but there's no stakes. Who cares?
All right. Diante, are you going to make this a clean sweep where none of us on the Ringer NFL show playoff Predictions Pod picks the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you go with the Chiefs? Do you go with the Ravens in the AFC Championship?
You know, it feels a lot worse when you frame it up that way. I wish you could have just let me make the pick instead of making me the one responsible here for putting the final nail in the coffin. But no, I mean, I've been saying it. I've been saying it all year long, man. This is going to be a year in the AFC where I think that one of these other quarterbacks gets to kind of quiet some of the storylines around whether or not Patrick Mahomes can be beat in this conference. I think that this year is going to be Lamar Jackson. I think that he gets his kind of poetic justice being able to go on the road and as an underdog potentially and go out and basically slay that dragon. And yeah, I think that they're going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year.
All right, listen, we have wonderful producer Christopher Sutton. We're just giving him the Chiefs. I think he would pick the Chiefs anyway. He can correct me if I'm wrong. So I just wanted on the record that the Ringer NFL show did have someone pick the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. We're not that stupid. I got nervous reading our staff predictions earlier. I'm scrolling. Oh no, Ravens. Oh, Bills. Lindsey Jones, thank you. She saved us. Someone picked the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. So the entire Ringer staff, we're not all morons. Some of us have some sense here. All right, so these guys have the Ravens in the Super Bowl. I've got the Buffalo Bills. Let's go to the NFC. Wild card round, much more interesting than in the AFC. Potentially, who knows what's going to happen, but on paper, I've got the Eagles beating the Packers. I've got the Commanders over Tampa, and I've got the Vikings beating the Rams. Ruiz, what do you have for your wild card round picks?
I got the Eagles beating the Packers. I got the Bucks protecting home field and beating the Commanders. And I have the Vikings beating the Rams on the road. But I think that could be a close game.
Okay. Diante?
I've got the Eagles beating the Packers as well. I have waffled on this wild card matchup since it's been set. But for the sake of this exercise, I picked the Commanders over the Bucks. And then I've got the Vikings beating the Rams.
Okay, so we all picked the Vikings over the Rams. That is a 1.5 point spread. Vikings are favorites there on the road. All right, my second round, Commanders at the Lions. I've got the Lions advancing to the NFC Championship game. Vikings go to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. I've got the Eagles. So that sets up for me Vic Fangio, Ben Johnson in the NFC Championship game. Potentially a lot of fun there. Ruiz, what do you have in the divisional round?
I have the same matchup. I have the Lions beating the Vikings, and I have the Eagles taking care of the Bucks. I don't think that will be a close game, but I think if Minnesota does advance and they do get another crack at Detroit, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. So I could totally see Minnesota winning that game.
All right, Diante, what do you got? We've both got Eagles, Lions.
I've got the Lions going to the conference championship game, and I've also got the Eagles beating the Vikings. But that'll be another great matchup, I would think, coming out of the divisional round.
All right. So we've all got Eagles, Lions in the NFC Championship. I've got the Lions advancing over the Eagles. Lions at home, get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl. Ruiz, what do you got?
I have the Eagles winning that game. I'm just not going to be a prisoner of the moment and look at that Sunday night game and think that the Lions defense is magically fixed. I think if it's not fixed, that team has some serious issues, and the Eagles are a perfect team to kind of capitalize on those issues. All
right. Diante, who are you going with?
They haven't had a game outside of maybe the 49ers on Monday night where it looked like that front seven was actually going to be a problem for them. I think if they match up with Philadelphia, Detroit, that being that team, I think matching up with Philadelphia is one of the few teams where whatever holes you have on your defensive line are going to be exposed. And I think that they'll have just enough answers to be able to beat the Lions. So I've got Philadelphia going to the Super Bowl.
All right. So these guys both have Ravens, Eagles in the Super Bowl. I've got Bills, Lions in the Super Bowl in Nolans, and I am going with the Detroit Lions. I'm just ignoring the injuries on defense. I think their offense is just going to go on a run. I think they're going to go for it with Dan Campbell and be aggressive and play to win and not play scared in any of these games. And they're just going to outscore opponents, get a couple turnovers here and there, all the way to the Lombardi Trophy. Ruiz, what do you got?
I just want to say that timeline. In that timeline, do you know what conversation we're having on the night of the Super Bowl and maybe
What's
the
that?
morning after? Is Jared Goff a Hall of Famer? And I refuse to believe that conversation will ever be had. So I'm just going to say the Eagles have to win that championship game. But I'm going to take the Ravens. It's Lamar's year. He might not win MVP, but I think this is the year he wins the other important trophy. And the other important MVP trophy, I just think whatever team comes out of the AFC is going to win this thing just because they're going to have the better quarterback in the matchup.
All right. Diante, Ravens, Eagles. Who do you got?
I'm taking the Ravens, but I think that if Baltimore and Philadelphia match up with each other, those are probably the two most talented 53-man rosters that are available in the playoffs. So I think that game could go either way, and I'd probably be pleased with the outcome. Like I said, I just think that this would be the year for Lamar Jackson to really kind of put to bed whatever doubts still exist about him. He's been one of, if not the best drop back passer in the NFL this year. Obviously they have all the equipment they need around him to be able to maximize his talents. And I think that if the defense continues to play the way that it's been playing over the last 2 months, you're going to have a hard time beating that football team in a playoff environment. So yeah, I think that they end up taking one over the Eagles.
What you just mentioned is kind of why it's so frustrating to hear these questions about Lamar in regards to the playoffs, because I think there was a time in his career where you could say he's not this advanced drop back passer, and maybe that's why the Ravens can't win in the postseason. But he spent the last 2 years in a drop back passing offense, and he won MVP one year, and he could win MVP this year, and he's looked even better in the pocket. So, I don't think the question is, it's no longer can Lamar Jackson win a Super Bowl. We know he can win a Super Bowl. It's will he win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, right.
And there's so many other factors that determine that in the NFL. Just look at Dan Marino.
Could just be when will he win Super Bowl. He's a young man. He's got many years ahead of himself. And I feel the same way about Josh Allen. Honestly, I feel like it's a matter of time.
Right, yeah.
There will be 1 year, barring some kind of, horrible injury, where it all comes together for both of those guys at some point in the next decade. Could be this year, could be next year. They got a long way to go. They are still relatively at the younger, especially for quarterbacks, at the younger stages of their career. But this is why we watched. In January, the legacies, and February, the legacies will be shaped. The narratives will be formed. We'll talk about all of it. And hey, we'll talk about all of it right after the game. We got big plans this weekend. Saturday night, we are going live on YouTube. Ringer NFL on YouTube. Follow, subscribe. Right after that Ravens-Steelers game, we are going to jump on the mics. We're going to talk Ravens-Steelers. We're going to talk Texans-Chargers, everything we saw from both those matchups. That's going to be a lot of fun. So you can watch live or listen after the fact on Spotify. Sunday night, our usual show will be in your feeds and, of course, on FanDuel TV. And then Monday night, we're going live again on YouTube after what we all expect to be a fun Rams-Vikings game. Again, we will jump on the mics, Ringer NFL on YouTube, and we will talk about that game as soon as it's over. So please join us for all of that. We are excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. 6 games. 3 days. We will have it all covered right here and, of course, on theringer.com. Thank you to Diante Lee and Steven Ruiz. Thank you to Dan Comer for all the help there with the draft and everything else. And, of course, thank you to producer Christopher Sutton. Additional production supervision by Conor Nevins and Arjuna Ramgopal. We will be back to talk to everyone Saturday night. Until then, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next time on the Ringer NFL Show.